Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkal alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today we are concluding our series of Rumi stories, and all our stories have been from the famous book, the Masnavi, and these were written a long time ago. But as we saw that the stories and the human nature and the conclusions of the stories, they are very much familiar to us today as they were centuries ago. So, subhanAllah, it's been a journey of looking at so many of these traits that human beings have. And inshallah, I'm going to do one story today to conclude our series. And then we're going to talk about the different traits that we've learned in these stories and how we can recognize ourselves in this as well. So today's story is the gazelle in the donkey stable. So one day, a hunter caught a gazelle in the desert. At night, when he returned to his house, he saw that there was nothing to eat. However much he thought about slaughtering the gazelle to roast it, he couldn't bring himself to do that. So he took the gazelle and went to the foot of the street where there were some people standing. So I want you to imagine this story, that there is a gazelle in the story and there's a hunter, and he has just hunted a gazelle and he's hungry. Right. So he's hungry, but he can't get himself uh, to sacrifice to slaughter the gazelle to roast it, and he couldn't do that. So he took the gazelle and went to the foot of the street where there were some people standing. So he said, "This gazelle is for sales." How much, they asked. "It's worth 50 tomans, but as I need some money, I'll sell it for 10. When they understood that the hunter needed money, one of the people said, "I'll buy it for 2 tomans. 3 tomans, said another. 4 tomans, said another man. One man, a driver of beasts of burden, took a liking to the gazelle. He had a bit of money on him, so he offered 5 tomans. No one is going to pay more for it at this time of night, he added. Anyway, how much meat does a dried up skinny gazelle have? People don't buy gazelles to slaughter, said the hunter. A gazelle is a gazelle, not a sheep. So you say, the driver retorted. Anyway, you can get 5 tomans from me. So he brought the gazelle and took it home, where he placed in the stable with the donkeys. Now the little gazelle went in and saw that the stable was a frightening place. There were several big donkeys and several mangers. In each manger there was some hay. There was a basin of water filled with litter. The place smelled of damp and dung. The air was stifling and the door firmly shut. When he was thinking about what he should do in this new situation, the donkeys noticed him. They looked at each other and snickered. One of the donkeys asked the small gazelle, "And who might you be?" "I too am one of God's creatures," replied the gazelle. "I'm called a gazelle. I was living in the desert when someone caught me and brought me home. Then he sold me to your master. Then he placed me here." "Very good," said the donkeys. "Whoever you are, welcome. This is a very good place. Look, the basin is full of water and the manger is full of hay. No one comes here to bother us until morning. You are our guest. Come, eat your fill and take your rest wherever you want, but be careful not to get trampled on." "Many thanks. Now that I am here," said the gazelle, "but I can't drink that water or eat that hay. You keep on doing what you are doing. I'll be in one of the corners." Right, so I'm going to pause here. So first of all, you might have noticed that the gazelle is a he. So the term gazelle is used interchangeably, but a male gazelle can also be called a bull. However, we're going to continue calling the gazelle a gazelle here. And you can see that the hunter, after he sold it to a man who has beasts of burden. Beasts of burden means that he has animals that are in service, like donkeys and horses. And the particular stable that he takes this gazelle in has got donkeys in it. So he takes the donkey into the gazelle, and the donkey goes into one of the mangers. The donkeys notice him, and they're quite friendly because they say to him that, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm one of God's creatures. I'm called a gazelle." And he introduces himself, and he says, "I was living in the desert when someone caught me and brought me home. Then he sold me to your master, and then he placed me here." So the donkey say, "Very good. So you're welcome, and this is a very nice place, and there's a basin full of water, and there's a manger full of hay. So you welcome to have eat and drink, and we won't bother you. You are a guest." And just be careful, take your rest, but be careful that you don't get trampled on, because you are a gazelle and we are donkeys, and we know that we have a difference. So then they say, "Many thanks, now that I am here," the gazelle says, "but I can't drink that water or eat that hay. You keep on doing what you're doing. I'll be in one of the corners." So he goes in the corner. So the donkeys applied themselves to the food and went from one manger to another. They jostled each other and ran about the stable, raising dust and dirt. The gazelle fled from one corner to another to keep out of their way, and from fear of being trampled upon. He was overcome with fright, misery, the dusty air, and the stable smell. So we can see from here that the gazelle um, is not very comfortable in this place, because the donkeys are moving about, and the gazelle is scared that it's going to get trampled on, and also is frightened, and doesn't like the dusty air because it's not used to it, and the stable smells. So all of these things are very disturbing to the gazelle. From time to time, the donkeys looked at the gazelle and gestured to one another. They laughed at him and said, "Look at the gazelle, what a strange animal. His legs are as thin as the tube of a water pipe. Look at his horns, look at his eyes. He doesn't resemble anything alive, and he doesn't eat anything, and he doesn't speak. He runs from one corner to another and is afraid of us. He thinks we're bogeymen." And they all laughed again. One of the gentler donkeys said, "Look, he's not like us, and he's a stranger here. Perhaps he's afraid of us because he's a small infant. Whatever he is, he's our guest, and he should be made comfortable. We shouldn't do anything to frighten him more." They all admitted that he was right and calmed down. Now, in this part of the story, you recognize how easy it is for creatures, including human beings, that when there's something different, right, or when somebody is different, how easy it is to single that person out. And this happens everywhere. This happens in schools, and it happens in communities, it happens in families, that when somebody is different, we tend to, even our human nature is like that, that we tend to single them out. And then it can lead to uh, making fun of them, right, laughing at them. And it can even lead to, if people are not nice, it can lead to bullying as well, right? So, and there's all kinds of bullying. So then so these people, they were, these animals are going towards this, right, these donkeys, because they see that he's so frightened, and um, he's different from them. So at first they were curious, but now, because the gazelle is showing that it's frightened, and it's showing that it doesn't want to be there, they're finding an excuse to laugh at him and say mean things. But there's a wiser, gentler donkey, and he says, "Look, he's not like us, and he's a stranger here. Perhaps he's afraid of us because he's a small infant. Whatever he is, he's our guest, and he should be more comfortable. We shouldn't do anything to frighten him more." They all admitted that he was right and calmed down. Now, this is an important part in the story because there's somebody who thinks outside the box. People tend to follow the crowd, right? Not necessarily the leader, but the crowd. So we have what we call human beings as well, herd mentality. What this means is that when certain people start thinking in a certain way or saying certain things, people tend to follow them. And we see this all the time in societies that um, people will follow whatever is being said without thinking for themselves. But you will get the odd people, you will get good people, and you will also get wise people who will think differently. Now, what we learn from here is those people who think differently and who stand up for the truth, is very important for them to actually say something, right? Because they can say, oh, it's none of my business. Let me go in my corner. This donkey could have said that. Let them do what they want to do. I'm tired. No. When you see something bad, then you have to say something. So this is what we're learning from this story, that when you see something that isn't right, then you have to be vocal about it. And this is why the hadith says that it's part of your iman. If you see something that is wrong, then first of all, you have to stop it with your hands. And if you can't do that, then that means you have to physically stop it. If you can't do that, then stop it with your mouth. That means at least say something and condone it, say that this is bad. And the least, the minimum, if you can't even do that, then at least think in your heart that this is bad, right? And that's the minimum of iman. So these are the levels of interaction that we can have in a society, where we can see where things are wrong. So in this table, we can see that this is not headed in the right direction, but that one who stands up and says that, well, he's a stranger, he's our guest, and we should make him comfortable, he's frightened. So because he speaks up, the others, they calm down, and they say, okay, let's just back off. So then the gentle donkey said to the gazelle, come, dear child, come here beside me, eat in my manger. See how good the hay is, yellow like saffron, thick like the leaves of the trees, soft like moist alfalfa, sweet like a lemon rind. Don't be afraid, no one will bother you. Come and have your dinner. I'm very grateful for your kindness, said the gazelle, but I'm not a child. My race is small and delicate. My body is small, but for my part, I'm mature and fully grown. If I were a man and not a gazelle, you would consider me an old man. The donkeys all laughed at such an absurd statement. One of them said, you're not a child, but an old man. Come here, old man, come beside me and eat some barley. Now, what's happening over here? We're going to pause and look at what's happened over here. So when the gazelle explains himself and says that I'm not a child, but because my race is small and delicate, and I look small, but in reality, I'm fully mature and fully grown. And if I were a man, you would consider me an old man. That means for my particular type, I am I'm an old gazelle. And so this makes them laugh even more. Now, what is it that's making these people laugh? What's making them laugh and be mean to the gazelle is, number one, ignorance, because they don't know any better. They have never met the gazelle type, right? They haven't met those creatures, and so they don't know what they are like. And so it's ignorance, and also because they are reacting to something, right? They're reacting instantly. They're reacting. They're not bothering to find out or ask more questions. And now this is also something that happens in human beings, that when we are when we see something different and we don't understand it or we've never seen it before, we will react to it, and sometimes we make fun of it. So it's important that we understand this, that it's not something that we can make fun of. When we don't understand something, then it's our duty to learn more about it, So we need to pause, practice the pause, and learn more. And sometimes it's just asking that other person for more information. Like if you encounter somebody with a disability, for example, and you don't understand it, and you are interacting with that person, then you can just ask them something. If you feel it's appropriate, you can just ask them, or you can make light conversation with them. And if they feel comfortable with you, then they will tell you themselves. So this is something that we have to, as human beings, we have to learn. And really, this comes from education, because we see in schools that when we bring anti-bullying education in, for example, or where there is racism, and we bring um, that type of education in, awareness and learning about other cultures, then we find that children who are not naturally like that, but because they've taken on societies and their parents and other people's prejudices, they start to think in a different way. So, education about this is key, right? So and don't expect people just to know things. So the education of like you're a youth and you're learning about the world, and you have to learn other people's perspectives. And this is not just to learn one people's perspectives and go in that extreme. No, learn different people's like if you learn something at school, then come back home and talk to your parents about it and learn their perspective, and come to appreciate where they are coming from. And you will be able to look at different perspectives. And then an enlightened person is able to do that, to look at different perspectives and to see the truth, right? They have, so it's very important to be able to do this. And so, and our truth, you have to remember, always comes from Allah, right? Allah, and through the Prophet ﷺ, what Allah taught the Prophet ﷺ. You have to remember this, because there are people out there who put all kinds of truths, right? Their truths out there, and they try to force them onto other people, especially in schools, through teachers, through textbooks, through assemblies, through advertising. So they try to force their agenda on others. So we have to be a thinking people. And even if people are telling us this is the truth and this is the truth, and you should think like this and you should think like that, you should always come back and try and talk to people, other people, and see what they have to say. So this is what this because there's a lot of people out there right now who are trying to put their agendas and their ways of thinking onto others. So this is a story about how different people will do different things. So this is a good story to actually end Rumi stories with. So here they because the gazelle says, "Look, I'm small and I'm from a different creature." So the donkeys all start laughing out of ignorance, and because they can't be bothered to learn, they don't know any better. So they say, "Come here, old man, come beside me and eat some barley." The donkeys laughed again. "I don't want anything," said the gazelle. "Hay and barley are good for you because you're used to such food. My teeth can't chew hay and barley. Please just leave me alone." "Ah," explained one of the donkeys, "I understand. This old man doesn't have any teeth. Poor old man, tell me, what did you eat in the desert? Did you eat the wind? Did someone cook noodle stew for you?" All the donkeys laughed. "Please don't make fun of me," cried the gazelle. "Alas, you don't understand. I'm suffocating here. A stable full of donkeys is not a place for me. I don't want to insult you, but a donkey is a donkey and a gazelle is a gazelle. Each has been created differently. I used to roam grassy places in the desert and eat fresh alfalfa. You see that I am not at fault." "Okay, okay," said one of the donkeys impatiently. "Now that we have encouraged him, just see how grandly he talks. He's suffocating here. Green meadows and fresh alfalfa. A gazelle isn't a donkey. The wretch doesn't like hay and barley as good as ours and wants to give him fresh alfalfa. You're the donkey. Forget him and let him die from hunger." This is what I want, said the gazelle. Leave me alone and don't make fun of me. The gazelle had become very sad and didn't know what to do. His eyes filled with tears, and he thought to himself, I wish that the hunter had thrown me in a well and not caused me to come here. Any fate is better for me than living with these malicious dolts. When the donkey, who was the gentlest of the lot, saw the tears of the gazelle, he felt sorry for him and went to him. Look, dear friend, don't cry. It doesn't do any good. Remember the old saying, laugh at the world so that the world may smile at you. Look at us, we laugh and we don't weep. We feel as sad about our lives as you do. But what can we do? Now that our fate has brought you to this stable, you too be like us. Talk, listen, laugh, and don't worry so much. If you say the stable is bad, so it's bad. Get used to it the way we have done. We would be much happier in a garden and would love to graze on fresh alfalfa. But when we can't, we can't. Don't kill yourself. Believe me, hay is also tasty. If you eat hay and barley as we do, you'll get bigger and become a distinguished animal. But if you want the fresh alfalfa, I'll pick out all of it that is in our food and give it to you. So you can see over here that this gentle donkey is trying to make peace and make the gazelle feel good. And he's giving him good advice because he's saying that don't cry, and even though you don't like it here and it's a smelly old barn and you don't have the food that you like and you want the fresh air, but you have ended up here, so you have to make the best of it. Don't kill yourself, he says. So this is also very good advice for us, that human beings, sometimes when we are get into a situation that we don't like, right, and we can't adjust to, then we get depressed. Now, subhanallah, a lot of people in the world, like you could ask maybe 100 people, let's say, right? Let's say 100 people, and you could ask them if they are happy with their lives. And how many do you think are going to say, yes, we are very happy and everything has turned out exactly as we wanted it to turn out, right? And this is in good times. You'll see that not a lot of people will be able to say that, even when the times are good, because there's always be something that they're not happy with. And if you ask them in a bad time, when they're going through a bad time, they will say, oh, this is really terrible and we can't adjust to it. And we don't know what to do. But there is something that we need to learn here, and that is that whatever circumstances or situations Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us in, that means whatever life brings us, and it could be anything, we have to learn how to adjust to it. We have to learn how to make the best of it and how to survive. And, you can learn this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never give us those kind of circumstances. But everybody needs to have a reality check on this, that should those kind of circumstances come like they do in times of war, in times of extreme stress and natural disasters, where somebody could lose their entire home, right? Like we hear of these fires, and if there's a fire in somebody's house, they lose everything that they own, right? And that can be very traumatic. But they didn't lose the most important thing, which was their life. Yes. And if there's a war, for example, you don't go to sleep without knowing if you're going to wake up the next morning, right? If you're going to be alive the next morning. So there's all kinds of circumstances in the world which can be very extreme. So what we have to remember is that, number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give us anything that we can't bear, that we cannot go through. You have to remember that, because Allah says that I won't give you anything that you will not be able to go through. So if Allah has given it to you, He will take you through it. So that's something, that's number one point that you have to remember. Number two is it's a state of mind. That means we can adjust our minds to live through anything that Allah gives us. And there's plenty of examples out there. And this is why we need to read good books so that we can learn from the lives of other people, and how they survive things. Um, an example that's coming to mind right now is the example of Nelson Mandela, who was imprisoned for 27 years. And most of that time was spent in solitary isolation. That means on his own in a small cell. And then he was treated very, very bad for 27 years. Imagine that. That's maybe twice of your lifetimes. But he was put into a cell for that long. And during that time, he not only survived, but he planned what he was going to do for his country when he got out, because he was fighting for the freedom of his people. His people, the black people of South Africa, were treated very, very bad, and so he knew that he had to do something, right? He could have chosen to live a life of luxury. He was an educated man. Even in the apartheid, he would have lived very nicely, but he chose this path because he had to free his people. And so they imprisoned him, and in prison he was treated so bad that the guards would come and urinate on his head. First they would torture him, and when he would ask for water, they would come and urinate on him. And so he went through so much, but not only did he go through it, he also came out of it. He knew a day would come, and he made himself so strong that he survived it and he came out of it. Now, what if he had, in that time, what if he had given up? What if he had committed suicide like many prisoners do who can't go through it? Right? What if he had done something else to jeopardize his freedom? But no, he kept himself very strong and he came out of it. And this is just one of thousands and millions of people who survive terrible things in this world. So we should read about them, we should learn about them, and so that it shows us that we are able to survive in this world. We can go through terrible things and we can survive. And more than his story, we can look at the stories of the prophets, alayhimus salam. And one that's coming to mind right now is Ayyub alayhi salam, who was sick with a disease for 18 years or more. So for 18 years, he had a disease where he had big boils on his body, where the pus and the blood would come out and it would stink, so that the people of his town, where he had once been the leader and he had been a respected member with a huge family and a farm and beautiful things and very, very respected. So those same neighbors, they came to him and they said, you have to leave from here because we can't stand the smell that's coming from around you. So he had to leave and everybody had left him. So he was left with only his wife. And then what they did is they went into the jungle so that they could be away from the people. And he started to live in the jungle. And in one time they had lived in luxury. And now they didn't even have enough food to eat. And his wife would go out and she would clean houses so she could bring some bread back so that he could eat. And during the day, the ants and the critters of the jungle would crawl on his body and eat and drink out of the pus that was flowing from his body. So imagine how sick he was. Imagine. And he stayed like that for 18 years. And one time his wife said to him, "Why don't you pray to Allah to take you out of this?" And he said that how many years have we lived in luxury before this, in comfort? So she said, she mentioned a number which was far greater than that. So he said, then shouldn't we be grateful? Shouldn't we be grateful that we had so many good years and now we are going through this? Besides, the one who put me in this, he knows and he will take me out of it. Subhanallah. And then the time came that Ayyub alayhi salam, he was taken out of it. He got a cure. His skin became perfect again. And slowly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restored back to him what he had lost. He had lost all his children had died. He had lost all the animals on his farm. He had lost his home. He had lost all his riches. He had lost his family. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restored all of that back and more because Allah had tested him. So everything that happens to us, number three, we have to remember that it is a test from Allah and Allah knows what He is doing. Right? It's not a mistake because some people will say, oh, where is Allah? Naudhu billah. They want to battle with Allah, they want to fight with Allah and say, where's Allah in all this? So Allah knows what He's doing and Allah has a plan. Right? He's taking you through this for a reason. Maybe it's to teach you something that you can't learn in any other way. It's a lesson that you have to learn. Maybe it's because your level in paradise is so high, but the deeds that you're doing in this world are just not going to make you get into that paradise that He's reserved for you. So He has to make it up, give you credit points here. So by going through this, and if you go through it patiently and beautifully, then Allah will give you all those credit points to get to that place in Jannah, which is eternal. So in this life, the test will end, but in Jannah, you will have that place for eternity. And you'll wish that, not only will you wish that, wow, that was so great what I went through, and look what I have now, you'll wish that every moment in your life would have been more tests for you so that you could have gotten that place in Jannah. But we should never ask for tests, na'udhu billah, because we're not strong to go through them. So this donkey, the advice that he's giving is that just adjust because you're already here now and there's nothing you can do. So why don't you adjust and just be okay here? Okay, you don't have to be happy, but at least don't kill yourself by being so unhappy. And at least eat and drink so that you can survive. So back to the story. But when the gazelle saw that they didn't understand what he was saying, he choked with anger and couldn't answer. So a lot of people, when they go through their tests, they get very angry because they feel like it shouldn't happen to them. They feel like, why is it happening? They might feel like nobody's understanding what they're going through. So at that time, when the test, you have to be very patient as well. At that moment, one of the donkeys cried from a corner of the stable, "Look here, I found a piece of fresh alfalfa. Friends, put every piece of fresh alfalfa that you find aside for the gazelle. If you want to do a good deed, give it all to the gazelle. His weeping has filled my heart with pity. Let's not let him cry. God wouldn't like it." So look, there are people trying to help him, right? There's another donkey who's saying, let's put all the fresh alfalfa on one side so that he can eat something. But the gazelle is not, look at what the gazelle says. "You don't have to feel sorry for me," said the gazelle. "Even your pity is stupid and foolish. I'm not a beggar to be given alms on the roadside for the pleasure of God. You're the beggars. You don't understand me because you're donkeys and I'm a gazelle." Whoa, so the gazelle is getting angry now, right? It's getting angry and now is making things worse for himself, right? The gazelle is saying that I don't want your stupid pity, right? I don't want that. And he's getting more angry. The donkeys turned away and said, "What is this? What a strange, stupid animal you are. We are treating you well, and you aim sarcastic remarks at us." One of them said, "The devil is telling me to give him a kick in the head." Another said, "He wants fresh alfalfa, but he won't accept any favors from us." A third said, "I'll teach him a lesson." And he went to the gazelle and kicked him in the leg. Another bit his shoulder. The gazelle fainted with fright and pain. But the gentle donkey said, "You've done wrong. It's not his fault. There are thousands of kinds of animals in the world. He is one of them. There are many kinds that think and live differently from us. We eat hay and barley. A gazelle doesn't. That isn't a sin, and there's no need to beat him up. You've done a very bad thing in attacking him." So you can see that the wise donkey, he's saying that you've done wrong now. You attacked him, right? And you didn't understand him, and he's frightened, and now he's getting angry. But you should have just left him alone because he doesn't know what to do. And he explains to them that there's thousands of kinds of animals in the world, and he's just one of them. And we eat hay and barley, but he doesn't have to eat it. He's a gazelle, and he's very different. And it's not a sin to be different. There's no need to beat him up. You've done a very bad thing in attacking him. So this is something else for us to learn, that there's thousands of different kinds of people in the world, and everybody will have a different personality. They may look different, they may act different, but we don't have to react to them, right? We don't have to hate them, we don't have to make fun of them, and we don't have to react to them, because there'll be different people in the world. The only thing we have to remember is that we have to follow Allah's law. That's really important, right? Because everybody is trying to be different and unique in the world, it can get confusing. That which tribe do I go and join? Who am I like? Right? You don't have to compare yourself with other people. You just have to say, what does Allah want me to be like? Right? That's the question you have to ask yourself. That's your criteria. And so be good to other people, right? Be kind and compassionate to others. Doesn't mean you have to be like them, but you don't be cruel to them and don't be mean to them. So then this, getting back to the manger, they're saying now the donkeys start arguing amongst themselves. It's really your fault, said the other donkeys. You started to spoil him from the very beginning. You made him cry. If you hadn't, his hunger would have forced him to eat this hay and exclaim, delicious. Morning dawned, and the animal driver came to the stable to take the donkeys out to work. He saw the gazelle fallen on one side, gasping for breath. He picked it up and put it on his shoulders. Then he carried it to the house of the hunter. Look, brother, I don't have any place to keep it except the stable. I put him there last night. It's obvious that the donkeys didn't get along with the gazelle. They kicked it, and now I feel sorry for it. Take it back and decide what to do with it. Whenever you get some money, give me my 5 tomans back. So the hunter took the gazelle back and cared for it until it got better. Then he took it to a zoo and sold it for 50 tomans, out of which he repaid the animal driver. The gazelle was put in the gazelle cage since he was very happy. He laughed, but the other gazelles taunted him, saying, "What a strange, carefree gazelle you are. It's a good thing that you can be so happy in this prison. Where did you come from?" "From hell," he replied. "I'm happy because whatever it is, we speak the same language. I've seen much worse than this. In comparison with the donkey's stable, this place is paradise. Life with the hateful and unworthy is worse than hell." So there's a happy ending for the gazelle, and you can see that he's sold to a zoo and he's put in a cage, but still the gazelle is happy. It's because he's been in a worse place, right? He knows there's worse than the cage, whereas other gazelles are not happy in the cage because that's not their natural habitat. Gazelles are meant to roam free in the forests and open land, but in the zoo they put them in cages. But this gazelle, our gazelle, is happy because he's found a place, at least, where he can be carefree and happy because he's been in a worse situation. And this is really our story too, because we came from a place, right? We were with Allah, and our souls are with Allah, and we were very happy there, right? We didn't have any worries and no cares. And then we were put into this world. We were put into the cage of this world. And this world is nothing like what we were used to and where we are going, where we're going back to Allah. This world is not like that. This world is a place of worries and cares. And in a way, it's a prison, because the Prophet ﷺ said that ad-dunya sijnun lil mu'min, that the world is a prison for the believers, right? The world is a prison for the believers, right? And for other people, if for non-believers, maybe it's a paradise. Not for everybody, but for some people, maybe it's a paradise. They're living their life up. They're living a wonderful life. But most people, even if they're not believers, they're not. So this world is a prison for the believers. We have to do our time in this world, and we have to use the best time, and we will go back to Allah, where it will be very beautiful, and we will go back to our real home, which it will be in Jannah, inshallah. Right? Our home will be in Jannah. That's our real home. And we will be with Allah and we'll be very happy. But in this world, we have to go through everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to go through. What our tests are, we have to go through them, and uh, we have to pass in our tests as well. So this book, the Rumi stories, is really about tarbiyah. They are stories of tarbiyah, meaning personal development. So they mention, because they illustrate to us about human nature, and they show us how people are and how they react, and the traits, good and bad traits of people. And so when we look at these stories, we are meant to reflect. They're like mirrors. We're meant to reflect in the story and really learn what we can get out of that story. So we've talked about a lot of a lot of traits in this story, and I'm going to mention them here. And these can also be known as akhlaq hamida, meaning the good akhlaq, right? The beautiful characteristics of human beings. And the first one is the tawheed, oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a beautiful characteristic of a human being, the first and the most important one. Why? Because when a human being recognizes Allah, when a human being knows Allah, then that person will that person will always be in the mercy of Allah, and that person has reached his true destiny. The next trait is a sincerity. This is something very important for human beings, that when we do something, we are very sincere in what we do. We recognize the truth, and we do something for its highest purpose. So for its best purpose. We don't waste our time doing something for purposes which are not good. So we find the highest purpose, and then we do it for that. The third characteristic is tawbah, meaning we repent to Allah. And this characteristic is important because it shows that we are humble and we are constantly turning to Allah for all our needs, not just when we need something, but our default state is that we are constantly doing tawbah and returning to Allah. The fourth is that we have the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in us. So when we make a decision, and when we are faced with so many trials and tribulations and troubles in the world, we are able to, our compass goes back to Allah, and it tells us how to make a decision. It tells us, what shall I do in this situation? So this compass of love is very important. The next characteristic of a good human being is they have shauq, which means desire for good things, desire for the love of Allah, desire for to go back to Allah in a good state, desire to do good in this world. The sixth is khawf, meaning fear of Allah. You fear Allah, and you're afraid that you might upset Allah, so we don't want to upset Allah. So this is very important. The next trait is hope. We have hope with Allah. We have very good hopes and high hopes with Allah only. The eighth is that we have abstinence. We stay away from things which do not benefit us. We develop the self discipline and the patience to stay away from things which don't benefit us at all. Tawakkul, we trust in Allah. And qana'ah, we have contentment with Allah. Whatever Allah has given to us, whatever the story of our life is, and whatever backdrop we have to live with in this world, we have contentment with it. We're happy with it, and we are content. We say to Allah, Allah, I am very happy with what you have given to me and how you have made me in this world. The next one is forbearance. So not only do we have patience in the moment, but we have long patience, right? We have forbearance means being able to go through something with a lot of patience and understanding. The next one is patience and gratitude. We do shukr of what Allah has given to us, and next one is truthfulness. We talked a lot about this in the Rumi stories. What is haqq and batil? We have to recognize what is the truth, what is falsehood. Next is tafweez, which means entrustment, being a trustworthy person, being trustworthy to yourself, fulfilling your own promises, fulfilling the promises of Allah, and most of all, fulfilling the promises you make to Allah. And the next one is rida, meaning being pleased with Allah, right? Being pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. These are the few characteristics, good characteristics of the human being. And then in these stories, we also talked about the what we call akhlaq razila, that means the despicable attributes, which are greed and greediness, anger, lying or falsehood, jealousy, miserliness, showing off, ostentation, vanity, which is called ujub in Arabic, vanity or conceit, kibr, which means arrogance, and malice, and hubbija, love of fame, and hubbidunya, which is love of the world. So these are the evil characteristics of the human being. So we've talked about both good and evil in these stories, and it's important for a human being, and especially if you're a young person and older people, if they're not learnt it, and it's always a good reminder, even if you have learnt it before, to look at these characteristics and to measure yourself against them. Which good qualities do I have, and which bad qualities do I have, and then to purify yourself from the bad ones and to aspire to the good ones, right? To aspire to good things. And you can do that by two things. One is to keep company with good people, listen to good people, keep company with them. And like, for example, this example is a classic example that if you want to smell nice, you want to be in a pleasant place, you would go to a perfume shop. So in a perfume shop, and in the olden days, they would burn the bukhur in the perfume shop too. So if you went in, you would come out smelling of perfume, right? Now, if you take that a step further and you want to learn how to make the perfume and how to sell the perfume and distribute the perfume, then you would have to be with a perfumer. You'd have to be with an expert person, a person who knows that. Yes. And so that this is so important, that if you want to be good in this world, then you have to find good role models and good people to be with. And number two is in our world, we have been left with last ummah, so we've been left with a lot of resources, physical resources, as in books. We've been left with a lot of knowledge, so you can learn a lot of knowledge from good books and teachers. So use your time to learn. uh, Knowledge is power, and you don't have to just learn about science and the most important knowledge after the Quran is knowledge of yourself. Because if you were marooned on an island, or if you lost everything in a night, what would you have left? You would have yourself left. So knowledge, self-knowledge, is a very big and important knowledge. And so in these stories of Rumi from the Mathnavi, we learned a lot about self-knowledge. And so you can go back and listen to the stories and really look at the morals and the ethics of the stories. And beyond that, you can yourself look at good stories, good biographies of the prophets alayhim salam, and the companions of the Prophet sallam, who were nurtured in under the eye of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can learn their biographies, and of course the best example for us is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. To learn his example, to examine in detail everything that he taught. So that's the best thing that we can do, inshallah. Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you enjoyed the Rumi stories. And inshallah, next week we'll be starting a new series. And I hope you will join us again, inshallah. In the meantime, make lots of dua and enjoy your week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.